Picture spending 7 years with someone, investing all your emotions into a marriage, but ultimately becoming unseen. That was my predicament. Eventually, I departed without any dramatic exit, merely exiting quietly, leaving behind a house echoing with stillness and a note of farewell. Days rolled into a week, yet not a hint of contact came through. She never seemed to notice I had left. However, when the truth sank in, it wasn't just her solitude she had to confront. It was the life I carried away. But before delving further into this narrative, kindly share your viewing location in the comments below and subscribe if you appreciate this story, so you won't miss future updates or notifications about upcoming events. Ethan Carter sat silently on the edge of the living room sofa, observing his wife, Sophia Bennett, lost in her phone screen. After 7 years of marriage, Ethan felt more like a silent ornament in their house than a companion. Year after year, Ethan invested his emotions into their relationship, seeking to fulfill her desires, aiming at her happiness, and longing for intimacy. However, his efforts were disregarded, treated as minor details in Sophia's self-absorbed life story. In contrast, Sophia seemed to grow cold and unresponsive over time. Previously overflowing with warmth and affection, she hardly noticed Ethan unless it benefited her interests. Her focus had shifted. Her career, social circle, even trivial pleasures seemed more important than the man she had pledged to treasure. For Ethan, every day was a battle to reclaim the bond they once held. The chasm between them only expanded. Ethan's patience was at its end. One night, he found the resolve to break the deafening quiet that had settled over their relationship, as thick as an unyielding fog. Leaning in, his voice steady yet heavy with both hope and despair, he asked, "Sophia, should we attempt to salvage our marriage?" His gaze implored hers for any sign of agreement. "Yes." In a detached manner, without even looking up from her phone, Sophia responded succinctly. "What's the point? I'm occupied. Mind your own business," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. These words hit Ethan like a physical impact. His chest tightened, his throat dried. Gathering what little composure remained, he continued. "I feel as though I'm merely a ghost in this house," he whispered, hoping his exposed emotions would initiate a substantial discussion. Sophia finally raised her eyes, but only to deliver a chilling, derisive smile. "If you don't like it, you can leave," she countered coldly, showing no concern or care for his feelings or their marriage. In that instant, something changed in Ethan. Her words were more than dismissive. They signaled the dismissal of him, his emotions, and their union. As Sophia focused on her phone again, Ethan understood he was no longer willing to wait for improvements. He would voice his concerns this time, and if necessary, leave. But first, he intended to make sure Sophia comprehended the consequences of her indifference. Eventually, they consented to visit couples therapy. This proposal from Ethan represented a desperate attempt to save their deteriorating marriage. For him, it meant confronting the escalating disconnect between them. For Sophia, it was merely an obligation, a task to complete before continuing with her routine. The initial session commenced under the guidance of Dr. Evelyn Monroe, a seasoned and compassionate therapist who specialized in mending troubled relationships. She welcomed them pleasantly, her composed nature providing a sharp contrast to the ongoing tension between Ethan and Sophia. "Let's begin with something straightforward," Dr. Monroe initiated, her voice both welcoming and authoritative. "In the marriage, it seems what Sophia cherishes most is stability. She enjoys having someone to manage finances and maintain order in the household." Ethan's reaction was more significant than he expected, and when questioned, Sophia remained indifferent. "Is that all I am to you?" Ethan asked, revealing his disbelief. Unfazed, Sophia implied there might be little else of value. "Everyone needs stability," she stated. Ethan looked towards Dr. Monroe, displaying a mixture of bewilderment and sorrow. "It seems like I've been striving to be your partner, offering love, support, everything you need, but you don't seem to notice me. I'm merely, there, useful." Before Dr. Monroe could respond, Sophia defended herself. "Ethan, I'm not implying you're merely a housekeeper, but I value stability over romantic passion. You question my feelings for love and connection, but they do matter to me, just not in the grand, dramatic way you seem to expect." Ethan pleaded, his voice quivering. Don't you see the importance of emotion, intimacy, and shared experiences? Sophia scoffed. I acknowledge their significance, but you're exaggerating the situation. Disheartened, Ethan slumped in his seat as her indifference fell upon him. Noticing the tension, Dr. Monroe leaned closer. Sophia, do you comprehend why Ethan feels disregarded? Sophia shrugged nonchalantly. I believe he's overreacting. You know I'm not a romantic. What's the point of this therapy then? There doesn't appear to be any pressing issues. Ethan gawked at her, taken aback by her denial of their relationship's fault lines. For years, he had been shouldering the weight of their marriage, attempting to address problems she refused to acknowledge. In the stark illumination of the therapy room, the reality struck hard. Sophia didn't care. Dr. Monroe redirected her gaze towards Ethan. Ethan, what emotions does this evoke in you? After a pause, he responded softly but firmly. It makes me feel like I've been deceiving myself. I've been clinging to something non-existent. She doesn't view me as her partner. She sees me as a tool. This therapy session marked a pivotal moment for Ethan. As the dialogue unfolded, he started seeing the futility in his attempts to restore their relationship. Sophia's indifference was no longer a matter of misinterpretation. It was an undeniable truth. By the conclusion of the session, Ethan's perspective had changed. He no longer felt the compulsion to save their marriage. Instead, he decided to fight for himself. With a weighty yet resolute heart, Ethan exited the therapy room, leaving Sophia behind. Sophia prioritized stability over love and connection within their union, favoring convenience instead. This decision led to the end of their relationship for Ethan, but it marked the start of his realization. With each therapy session, a palpable tension emerged, initially offering hope to mend their distance, yet ultimately transforming into an exercise in disappointment, especially for Sophia. As Ethan entered every session with a sense of openness and vulnerability, Sophia's disinterest was hard to miss. Delayed arrivals, phone clenched tightly, brisk responses, and dismissive attitudes became the norm. During their final therapy session, Dr. Evelyn Monroe attempted to provoke thought by inquiring, Sophia, what do you think Ethan requires from you to feel more connected within this marriage? Sophia audibly sighed, crossing her arms as she leaned back in her chair. I'm not a mind reader, she replied, expressing her exasperation in her tone. If there's an issue, he should express it directly rather than involving me unnecessarily. Sitting next to her, Ethan gritted his teeth under the table, his temper fraying. This is precisely why we're here, Sophia, to discuss issues, he said. However, every time I try, you dismiss me. Sophia shrugged nonchalantly, unaffected by his irritation. Because there's nothing wrong. You're the one overreacting. I'm content with how things are. Dr. Monroe stepped in soothingly. Sophia, therapy is about finding a balance where our needs are met. It's not about placing blame. But Sophia had already withdrawn. Her demeanor stiffened, demonstrating her disengagement. Listen, she interrupted, ending the conversation. This is sufficient. I don't need anyone scrutinizing me. Ethan is the one with a problem, not me. The room grew quiet, the tension of her statement echoing in the air. Ethan felt a stab of sadness, but also a dawning understanding. Her lack of participation wasn't a brief absence, it symbolized her disrespect for their marriage. Sophia abruptly rose, slinging her bag onto her shoulder. I don't have the time for this, she announced. If Ethan chooses to spend his time here, that's on him. I have more important matters to attend to. Dr. Monroe and Ethan shared a worried look. As Sophia left the room, the door's closing sound echoed as a final period in their joint endeavor. In that instant, Ethan's determination solidified. Her words and actions made clear what he had been hesitant to acknowledge. Sophia wasn't invested in repairing their relationship. For her, avoiding therapy was simpler than addressing the flaws in their marriage. For Ethan, it was the moment he understood that self-preservation meant releasing her. The silence in the private therapy session starkly contrasted with the turmoil within Ethan. Opposite him, Dr. Monroe waited. In the tranquil silence, Ethan finally voiced what he'd long evaded. She doesn't love me. It was unusual for Sophia to be unresponsive in their therapy sessions, and this time was no exception. However, now, Ethan found the courage to express his truth without interruption or invalidation. Dr. Monroe sympathized, acknowledging the painful revelation, but also signifying progress. This is a step towards understanding, Ethan. What's your next move? A hint of determination graced Ethan's lips as he spoke. I'll depart. His tone was firm yet not subdued. For the first time, Ethan felt empowerment amidst the years of emotional disregard, sleepless nights pondering a lopsided marriage, and endless attempts to earn Sophia's affections. He wasn't leaving as a victim. He was leaving as someone who had finally found control. If Sophia prioritized convenience over relationship, then he would make her live without the comforts she'd grown accustomed to. Over the next few days, Ethan strategically planned his actions. His intentions weren't motivated by vindictiveness, but a desire to restore his respect. Each move was precisely thought out, anchored in practicality and legal rights. First, Ethan addressed their shared bank account. As he had contributed most of the funds, he ensured every withdrawal was legally permissible. He transferred his money into a personal account, leaving the joint one with minimal balance. He smirked wryly at the thought of Sophia discovering too late that her security relied on the man she'd disregarded. Subsequently, Ethan scrutinized the household bills. The majority electricity, water, internet were under his name. He arranged for their termination to take effect soon after he left. If Sophia had neglected managing these essentials, she would now grapple with handling them solo. Ethan scrutinized Sophia's laptop and phone data, discovering messages that exposed her affair with Daniel Harris. The agony of reading her texts was acute, but it strengthened his resolve. He amassed the evidence covertly, making sure he had a comprehensive collection for future reference. Challenging a lawyer, Ethan detailed his rights and submitted paperwork to safeguard his share of their marital possessions. The process instilled a sense of power. For the first time, he felt like he was regaining command over his own existence. As his strategy took shape, Ethan drafted a concise yet influential message. Sophia, I owe you a lesson in value. I deserve better than to be an appendage in someone else's life. Savor the stability you relish. He decided to leave it on the dining table, marking the end of their one-sided relationship. Unlike the despair he felt weeks ago, Ethan now acted with tranquil determination. His actions were not hasty, they were calculated and grounded in self-worth. No longer yearning for Sophia's approval or expecting her transformation, Ethan instead concentrated on making her experience the repercussions of her actions. As he completed his arrangements, Ethan experienced an unfamiliar tranquility. For years, he had dwelled in the shadow of someone who either failed to recognize or refused to acknowledge his value. Now he was prepared to emerge into the light, forcing Sophia to confront the darkness she had cultivated. His departure would signify more than just an end, it would be a declaration. The night was unusually still, with a gentle wind stirring the leaves in the yard. Ethan had recently returned home after a long day and was greeted by an unexpected sound. Laughter. It wasn't the casual laughter of a program or a call. It was lively, intimate, and uncomfortably familiar. He hesitated in the hallway, his heart sinking as he struggled to recognize the voices. Intrigued yet apprehensive, Ethan approached the sliding glass door leading to the yard. Evening light from the patio lamps bathed the lawn, illuminating Sophia at ease in a deck chair, accompanied by Daniel Harris, her gym partner. Sitting beside her was a man Ethan swiftly identified. They were casually sipping wine together. Sophia failed to recognize Andrew initially, but upon opening the door, she invited them inside. Intrigued yet apprehensive, she approached the doorway. By her side, Ethan stood, his heart constricting as he struggled to maintain his composure. Your gym partner enjoying wine in my backyard, he queried, his voice edged but restrained. Sophia barely spared him a look, her nonchalance fueling Ethan's ire. So what? She retorted, her voice indifferent. There's no need for unnecessary drama. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, picking up on the tension, yet Sophia remained unfazed. Her careless shrug, as if the matter were trivial, pierced Ethan with a pang of betrayal. You're not upset, he repeated, his tone escalating. Sipping wine with another man in our backyard? You don't find that significant? Sophia took a calculated sip from her glass, her gaze indifferent. You're exaggerating. We're merely conversing. Perhaps you should unwind. Ethan fixated on her, the truth smashing against him. This wasn't just disrespect, it was a blatant disregard for our marriage. He shifted his focus to Daniel, who seemed eager to vanish. And your role here? Ethan asked sharply. What brings you here? Daniel stuttered. Sophia invited me over for advice on workouts. Workouts? Ethan retorted sarcastically. Indeed, wine pairs wonderfully with squats. Sophia sneered, her annoyance evident. Good heavens, Ethan, don't be foolish. At that instant, Ethan's rage transformed into a bone-chilling lucidity. There was no remorse in her tone, no contrition in her stance. She didn't attempt to refute the implications of their proximity. It seemed as if she assumed he wouldn't or couldn't act upon it. Without uttering another word, Ethan turned and re-entered the house. His hands quivered as he shut the door after him, but his thoughts were whirling. If Sophia was content to view their marriage as a convenience, it was now time for her to experience its absence. The laughter outside returned, soft yet biting, reverberating through the gaps in Ethan's resolve. However, this time it wasn't anger that consumed him. Rather, determination filled him. This decisive moment fortified his intention to depart and to make sure Sophia's infidelity didn't go unpunished. As he stood alone in the stillness of the kitchen, gazing at the empty wine glasses on the counter, a heavy sense of purpose washed over him. The betrayal had shattered any illusions, but it had also provided him with the clarity needed. This was not merely the end of a marriage, it represented a new beginning, a chance to correct the wrongs. That night marked the commencement of Ethan's revenge plan. The house held an unsettling stillness, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator. Ethan sat in the dimly lit living room, recalling the joyous laughter from the backyard that pierced his dignity. With a firm resolve to uncover the truth, he decided to probe the nagging suspicion that Sophia and Daniel were involved in something more than friendship. Looking over at Sophia's laptop abandoned on the kitchen counter, Ethan hesitated. A pang of guilt gripped him. This wasn't his usual course of action. However, a steelier part of him, hardened by her indifference, propelled him forward. If she had nothing to hide, there was no cause for concern. If she did, it was time for the truth to be revealed. He logged into the laptop with her birthday as the password, as casual as her therapy responses. But her email account showed nothing out of the ordinary. Then he spotted the symbol for a messaging application in a corner, shrunken. His heartbeat accelerated as he clicked it. The chat interface popped up immediately, displaying an active dialogue with Daniel Harris. At first, the interaction seemed casual, but as Ethan scrolled back, the tone altered drastically to one that was intimately revealing. His gaze swept over the text messages, each word piercing him more profoundly than the last. Sophia, Ethan is so predictable. He just nags and nags. I can't take it anymore. Daniel, then why stay? You know I'm here for you. Sophia, because he pays the bills and it's easy. But honestly, Ethan bores me to death. You're who I really need. Ethan stood still, his heart thumping in his chest as he reread the words, hoping they might transform somehow. However, they remained stark, calculated, and final. The messages weren't merely about an affair. They were a glimpse into Sophia's callous disregard for him as an individual. He found himself relegated to a mere financial support system, a trivial stand-in during her pursuit of other desires. The revelation left him momentarily speechless, his fingers hovering above the keyboard keys. A wave of anger surged within him, yet it was tempered by a feeling of vindication. Her infidelity wasn't merely emotional, it was premeditated, calculated, and shameless. As he continued to read further, another message caught his eye, one that erased any lingering suspicions. Sophia, he's oblivious. I could vanish for days, and he likely wouldn't notice. Daniel, you should abandon him by now. Sophia, why would I do that? I'd lose the house, the money, everything. No way. Ethan slouched in his chair, gazing at the screen. The brazenness of her words struck him harder than anticipated. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was brazenly exploiting him, using him as a tool to sustain her comfortable lifestyle. He closed the laptop with a soft click and sat in the quiet solitude of the room. The betrayal weighed heavily on his chest, yet it brought clarity. The puzzle pieces were now fitting perfectly, leaving no room for ambiguity. Sophia didn't merely lack love for him, she displayed a lack of respect, empathy, and loyalty. Ethan's initial shock faded, giving way to determination. He wouldn't confront her immediately. Instead, he needed strategy. Her messages verified his suspicions. Sophia prioritized convenience over all else. If she couldn't value what he offered her, he would strip it away bit by bit. As he stood, a sense of tranquility washed over him. The course was clear. Sophia had chosen to manipulate his trust, but she underestimated his resolve. She might think him predictable, but soon she would realize her mistake. For Ethan, the evidence wasn't merely proof of her betrayal, it served as the motivation he needed to reclaim his life. In his heart, betrayal weighed heavily on Ethan, yet instead of sinking him into despair, it ignited a steady resolve within him. Over the years, he had bestowed trust, dedication, and affection upon Sophia, only to be met with apathy and deceit in return. The messages he discovered left no room for redemption, offering only a clear course of action. He decided to leave her, but not without making her feel the full impact of her actions. Ethan's initial step was the simplest. The joint bank account they shared was one he had primarily funded, covering their mortgage, bills, and common expenses. For years, Sophia had been taking for granted that the funds would always be available. She never inquired about how it was managed. She merely enjoyed the perks. As the night wore on, Ethan sat at his laptop and, with calm deliberation, logged into their online banking portal. He carefully transferred the bulk of the funds to his personal account, leaving just enough in the joint account to avoid immediate arousing suspicion. Sophia seldom monitored it frequently in any case. The remaining amount was sufficient to handle minor recurring deductions, so she wouldn't find anything out of place. However, by the time he had departed, the confirmation of the transfer appeared on the screen, bringing an unanticipated feeling of freedom for Ethan. For years, he had been funding Sophia's luxuries, but now, for the first time, he was regaining control. The subsequent action required a blend of pain and determination from Ethan. Sophia had constructed her social life around an elegant and reputable facade. Her acquaintances and relatives admired her, or so she had led them to believe. Yet, Ethan understood the reality, and it was now time for others to witness it too. He collected the damaging conversations between Sophia and Daniel into a well-organized, irrefutable collection. The screenshots of the dialogues, time-stamped, portrayed a clear portrait of her infidelity. Ethan wrestled with the idea of sending the evidence anonymously, but opted out due to potential confusion. Including his name on the emails left no room for misinterpretation. That night, he drafted a concise, straightforward message to Sophia's closest friends and family. I regret to share that Sophia has been untruthful about her obligations in our marriage. Attached are messages that offer context. I believe you should be aware of the truth. Signed, Ethan. Sending the email was an unusual blend of relieving and bitter feelings. He wasn't acting out of malice for revenge, but to make Sophia accountable for her deceit. Managing household logistics, utilities, internet, and her daily subscription had always been Ethan's responsibility in their life, another instance of her taking his role for granted. In the days that followed, Ethan contacted each service provider to withdraw these conveniences, making Sophia face the reality of her dependence. Gradually, he terminated all accounts under his control. Shortly following his departure, utilities like electricity and water would be disconnected, and internet service, Sophia's vital connection to work and entertainment, would cease on the same day. When the customer service representative proposed transferring these accounts to someone else, Ethan refused. I want them closed completely, he stated. His voice was composed, bordering on indifferent, but inside, a sense of grim triumph filled him. Sophia would realize then the extent of her reliance on the support he had provided. The climax of his strategy demanded meticulous planning and expert advice. Ethan sought legal counsel to secure his rightful claim over their shared assets. Although the house was registered jointly, it was primarily financed by him. The attorney confirmed a strong case for repossessing his share of the property. Furthermore, Ethan filed for divorce, initiating the legal proceedings discreetly. Without delay and diligently documenting each move, the attorney suggested to Ethan, who had already taken these steps. Each action was meticulously planned to restrict Sophia from challenging or tampering with the proceedings. Despite this, Sophia remained oblivious throughout. Her days followed their usual pattern, texting Daniel, relaxing in the house Ethan managed, and scrolling through social media. Unbeknownst to her, their account funds were dwindling, cancellation notices for utilities were imminent, and a legal storm was brewing. Her nonchalance only served to strengthen Ethan's determination. The evening before his departure, Ethan composed a brief note and left it on the kitchen counter. "Sophia," he wrote, "I have given you years of love, respect, and security. You have given me betrayal and apathy. I wish you well in the life you've constructed for yourself, because I no longer wish to be a part of it. Farewell, Ethan." Perplexed and reactive, this is my current state. As Ethan carefully gathered his possessions and departed the residence, a sense of unexpected tranquility enveloped him. His departure was no longer fueled by anger, but by the yearning to regain his self-respect. He had given Sophia everything, and now it was time for him to reclaim what was rightfully his. She would find an empty house, a disconnected life, and confront the inescapable consequences of her actions. For Ethan, this wasn't simply a departure, but a fresh start. For Sophia, it would be an unanticipated reckoning. The dwelling was quiet, the silence bearing the weight of both oppression and liberation. Ethan moved with purpose, packing his belongings with methodical swiftness. He took only the necessities: clothing, personal items, and his laptop. Everything else he left behind. The items in the house no longer belonged to him. They were merely remnants of a life he had invested himself into, a life that Sophia had made worthless. As Ethan closed the zipper on his final bag, he paused, casting one last look around the room. The chosen furniture and old photos from the past seemed like far-off reminiscences. The room had echoed with laughter and dreams earlier, but now it stood as an empty husk, mirroring their marriage's current state. A sigh escaped him, carrying waves of sadness and determination. It marked the closing of one chapter and the opening of another, a time when he wouldn't be merely a backdrop in someone else's existence. He ventured to the kitchen to retrieve the note penned earlier. Brief but heavy with emotion, it conveyed both closure and clarity. He placed it on the counter, aware she would find it there, the last message he'd leave behind in the home we once shared. "Sophia, thank you for teaching me an important lesson. I deserve a better existence, one where I am not just a side character. You showed me your definition of stability, and now I wish you all the joy from it, fully lived on your own. Farewell, Ethan." He reread the note once more, confirming it captured all his feelings. It expressed gratitude for the lesson learned, determination to proceed, and an unspoken acknowledgement of her aloofness. It wasn't malicious, but it didn't offer pardon either. It was just honest. Before departing, Ethan took a last walk through the house. His footsteps whispered, each room bearing memories that felt spectral. The living room where they spent evenings together now felt chilly and lifeless. The kitchen where they had shared many meals seemed like a testament to their estrangement. As he approached the front door, Ethan took a deep breath, allowing the weight of the moment to sink in. Then, with steady resolve, he exited, closing the door firmly behind him. The sound of the lock was the last period on a story that had concluded long ago. Ethan didn't glance back. For the first time in years, he was advancing, heading towards a life where he could at last be liberated. Days slipped by without hearing from Ethan, yet Sophia scarcely observed it. Her daily activities stayed consistent, swiping incessantly through social media, conversing with Daniel, and sipping her morning coffee absent-mindedly. The stillness within the house didn't appear strange to her. On the contrary, it felt like a soothing respite. To Sophia, Ethan was merely being his habitual self, distant, brooding, likely mulling over some petty matter. She had no intention of checking their shared account or inquiring about his location. When he was absent, She presumed he was either at work or somewhere else, engrossed in silence. His absence didn't seem out of the ordinary as, in her mind, Ethan's presence had receded into the periphery of her life. One evening, while lazing on the couch, her phone vibrated with a message from Daniel. They exchanged a series of friendly texts, his interest bolstering her self-esteem. Ethan never occurred to her. In her mind, he primarily served to maintain her lifestyle's convenience and consistency. The idea that he might depart, let alone do so, was beyond her contemplation. She'd occasionally scan their home, noticing minor discrepancies like missing shoes in the hallway or his laptop absent from the kitchen counter. However, these inconsistencies didn't perturb her. Instead, she dismissed them as him possibly rearranging things. As days passed and silence filled their home, Sophia remained blissfully unaware. So deeply ingrained was her apathy that it guarded her from the truth of the matter. Unbeknownst to her, Ethan, the man she had casually dismissed, had departed, but she was too ensconced in her own realm to perceive it. Life for Sophia continued as routine until fissures in her stability grew glaringly apparent. One day found Sophia seated before a bank teller, her perfectly polished nails drumming anxiously on the countertop. The woman had visited the bank to investigate a payment rejection for an online shopping spree, believing it was merely a technical glitch. However, when the clerk inspected her account details, his facial expression changed to one of uncomfortable empathy. "Madam," he began hesitantly, "your shared account shows a residual balance of $7.52. Sophia's mind struggled to wrap itself around the figure. "What? That can't be true," she retorted sharply, moving closer. "Check it again. It's impossible for it to be that low." The clerk nodded and quickly typed on his computer. "It seems there were multiple large withdrawals made earlier this week. Were you aware of these transactions?" Sophia's heart quickened. "No, I wasn't. What sort of bank lets someone drain an account like that without informing me?" she exclaimed, growing more vocal with each word. Others nearby glanced up, but Sophia paid them no mind. The teller stated to Sophia that the withdrawals were carried out by the main account holder, someone who has permission to use the funds. This revelation struck Sophia hard. "Ethan," she whispered bitterly, before standing up and hastily leaving the bank, her thoughts in disarray. It was the first sign of turmoil in Sophia's usually stable life. Her day took a turn for the worse as her phone buzzed with an influx of messages. At first, she thought they were from Daniel, but their tone was far from playful. The first message was a text from her mother. "Ma'am, Sophia, what is this? How could you do this to Ethan?" Her insides nodded as she read another one, this time from a close friend, who also happened to be a friend. "I can't believe you would betray Ethan like that. Don't ever ask me for anything again." As she scrolled through numerous similar messages, panic washed over her. Clicking on a screenshot, she found a record of her private chat with Daniel, revealing every word to her loved ones. Ethan's ridicule, her admissions of exploiting him, and flirtatious conversations with Daniel were now exposed. The phone slipped from Sophia's grasp as the realization of her humiliation settled in. But how had Ethan obtained all this? And more distressingly, why had he shared it with everyone she knew? In panic, she quickly called her mother, who picked up immediately. "How could you do this?" her mother asked, her voice trembling with disapproval. "Ethan gave you everything, Sophia. He loved you, supported you, and this is how you repay him." "Mom, it's not what it seems," Sophia tried to explain, but her mother interrupted. "Don't try to deceive me. Everyone has seen the messages. You've brought shame upon yourself and disgraced our family." The call ended abruptly, leaving Sophia motionless. In the ensuing hours, Sophia came to terms with the extensive nature of her public embarrassment. Her friends ceased replying to messages, her colleagues shied away from calls, and even Daniel seemed absent. The intricate network of relationships she had labored over was crumbling, and she was powerless to halt it. Upon waking up the next day in an uncharacteristically quiet house, Sophia clicked on the light switch in her room, but nothing happened. Baffled, she moved towards the kitchen only to find the electricity wasn't working there either. Assuming it was a blackout, she attempted to connect to the internet, but found the Wi-Fi was malfunctioning too. Irritated, Sophia reached for her phone to contact the utility company, but before she could, an email alert buzzed on her screen. Final notice: water service terminated due to non-payment, a revelation that filled her with dread. Ethan. It had to be Ethan. Poring over the accumulated bills on the counter, she discerned a pattern. Overdue bills piled up for utilities and loans in Ethan's name. With his passing, these accounts were terminated, causing a cascade of problems. Sophia's supposedly solid living arrangement crumbled, leaving her in dire straits. By afternoon, her annoyance escalated into desperation. She needed internet to work from home, water for bathing, and electricity to charge her phone. Her life of ease was swept away, exposing her reliance on Ethan. As the sun waned, Sophia's anger dissipated, leaving regret in its place. For the first time, she faced the repercussions of her decisions. The stability she held dear vanished, along with any semblance of control. In solitude, Sophia found herself grappling with the loss of a life once considered routine, maybe forever. Seated in her dimly lit lounge, Sophia tightly gripped her phone. Despite efforts, power remained elusive, exacerbating the stifling quietude within the house. Desperate, she dialed Daniel's number, her fingers quivering. He represented her last hope, the individual who had vowed to better her existence. She held on to his promises, cherishing their warm interactions. Surely he would aid her in this predicament. After several rings, Daniel responded hesitantly. "Sophia, what's happening? You've been persistently calling me." Sophia raised her eyebrows. "I need you," she admitted, her voice cracking. "Ethan is gone. He took everything: money, utilities, everything. I can't bear this burden alone." A lengthy silence followed, and for a moment Sophia believed the call had been disconnected. Then Daniel spoke, his voice colder than ever before. "Sophia, I don't think things will turn out as planned." Her heart sank. "You implied you'd stay by my side and stated I was essential to you. But now it seems we were in a different phase, as you declared," he stated bluntly. "I didn't agree to be entangled with your troubles, Sophia. You're in turmoil, and I'm not the one to solve them." His words felt like knives, piercing deeper with each syllable. "Is that it?" she questioned sharply, her voice escalating. "You're simply going to depart after everything?" he responded, now sounding agitated. "I have my own affairs to tend. I can't help you manage yours. I apologize, but you're on your own." Before she could react, the connection ended. Sophia gazed at the phone, her thoughts swirling. She yearned to yell, to hurl the phone away. Yet, all she managed was to sink onto the couch. The person I considered a constant presence had left me as swiftly as Ethan did. Sophia was left solitary in the shadows, her hard-built image falling apart around her. The security she once assumed was constant vanished, along with Daniel. For the initial time, she experienced the oppressive weight of solitude and desperation. With no one else to seek solace from, she was left with an empty house and the hollow reverberations of her decisions. Standing apprehensively before Ethan's new residence, Sophia's palms grew clammy as she prepared to knock. She had hesitated for days, uncertain of what to say, but her internal turmoil eventually surpassed her pride. The silence from him was deafening, and with Daniel gone and her life in disarray, Ethan emerged as the sole individual she could consider approaching. When the door opened, there he stood. Calmly poised, Ethan's posture contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside Sophia. He appeared different, lighter somehow, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Sophia's prepared words stumbled under his steady gaze. "Ethan," she started, her voice quivering, "I was wrong. I made countless errors." Ethan remained silent for a while, leaning against the doorframe with an inscrutable expression. The distant hum of traffic was the only sound. When he eventually spoke, his voice was steady yet firm. "Sophia, what brings you here?" Tears filled her eyes as she tightly clenched her hands. "I need you, Ethan. I was foolish, self-centered, and blind. I see that now. I'm ready to change." He shook his head, a faint, almost compassionate smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "No, Sophia, it's not because you've suddenly recognized my value. You're here because your life has fallen apart and you're trying to mend the pieces." "That's not correct," she whispered hesitantly. "I love you." Ethan's smile vanished, replaced by a determined gaze. "You don't love me, Sophia. You never did. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have used me as a prop for your stability. You didn't apologize for causing me pain. You merely regretted losing the lifestyle I offered you." "Please," Sophia begged, her voice trembling. "Don't discard everything. Don't throw it all away." But Ethan remained steadfast, unyielding. "It was lost a long time ago before I left," he said calmly. "You made your decisions, and now you must live with them. I wish you luck in finding the stability you hold dear." With that, he closed the door, leaving Sophia standing desolate on the porch. As she turned to leave, the burden of his rejection enveloped her like a storm cloud. For the first time, she truly comprehended the extent of what she had surrendered, and there was no way back. Alone in a confined studio apartment, a stark contrast to the spacious home she once shared with Ethan, Sophia sat, surrounded by second-hand furniture and a single lamp from a thrift store, casting the only light in the room. A pile of unopened bills and past due notices cluttered the table. She knew without looking what each one contained. The sense of security she had once cherished was gone, replaced by the harsh realities of her choices. She picked up a dusty photo frame from the window ledge. It was a memory from their third anniversary, Ethan grinning happily as he held her hand. Sophia traced his face with her fingertip, her eyes filling with tears. For the first time, she realized the magnitude of what she had thrown away, her mockery and dismissal of his love, now painfully clear. A solitary tear trickled down her cheek as she put the frame back in its place. The quiet apartment felt oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards when she moved. She considered calling anyone, but her phone remained silent. Her friends had distanced themselves, refusing to be associated with a cheater. Even her family, ashamed of her betrayal, kept their distance. Without internet, she found no respite in social media distraction. Her universe contracted to the confines of this minuscule apartment, and the burden of her decisions became inescapable. Loneliness smothered her, regret overwhelmed her heart. Sophia had constructed a life around comfort and facade, now bereft of both. In stark contrast, Ethan's life metamorphosed into something he hadn't dared imagine earlier. He stood on a sun-kissed beach, a camera hanging from his shoulder as he immortalized a breathtaking sunset. Photography, a long-neglected passion, now engrossed his days with a sense of purpose and inspiration. By his side was Lily, a compassionate and understanding woman met at a local gallery. Her laughter resonated sincerely, her support unyielding, and she appreciated him for who he genuinely was. They shared an uncanny silence that needed no words, a bond Ethan had never known with Sophia. Reviewing the photos together, Ethan's face gleamed with a smile that extended to his eyes, a smile birthed from contentment and liberation. The weight of his past had vanished, making room for a life brimming with hope. In the evenings, Ethan immersed himself in writing a memoir about his voyage, a healing endeavor providing insight into how far he advanced. Instead of resentment, the pages echoed with gratitude for the wisdom he gleaned and the fortitude he discovered within himself. One afternoon, Sophia stumbled upon an online photo of Ethan and Lily laughing side by side against a backdrop of sunlit waves. Ethan's expression was radiant with pure joy, his eyes gleaming in a manner Sophia recognized she had never witnessed before. She set her phone down, her heart constricting with an emptiness she couldn't define. Ethan had moved on, rebuilt his life, and found joy apart from her, while she was left with only memories and remorse. Whispering softly in her quiet apartment, Sophia admitted, "I erred." However, her words were lost amidst the vacuum. She realized too late that security wasn't solely about wealth or practicality. It encompassed love, regard, and bonding. Ethan discovered these aspects, yet not with Sophia. Reflecting on his life's path, Ethan penned a final sentiment in his memoir. Sometimes, the most effective retaliation isn't causing them pain. It's finding joy they can't reach and showing them what they surrendered. As Ethan prospered, Sophia's existence became a stark testament of the consequences of neglect. Ultimately, their narratives parted ways completely, one chronicling growth and rejuvenation, the other serving as a cautionary tale on the price of negligence.